basically your shoulder, and the pelvic girdle, which is basically your hips. So the pectoral girdle, the clavicle, of course you know what the clavicle is, it's your collarbone. The scapula, better known as the shoulder blade, and then the bones of the upper limb, basically sort of the humerus. And then the pelvic girdle is the pelvic bone itself, and of course that's this very large and complicated big bony structure down here, and the bones of the lower limb. I was somewhat amazed tonight when I came in, when we started with 2 skeletons. I think we had 3 last night, so there must have been a party last night because now we've got 5. I'm certain there will not be 5 skeletons out on the next exam, but the skeletons do get used, especially for showing how the bones fit together, and also for the articulation. So that kind of works well also. So anyway, so this is where we're going tonight. This is the picture in your book that details what we've got here. In other words, remember we were 206 is our total number. We covered more or less the 80 in the axial skeleton, and now we're left with 126 bones of the appendicular skeleton. But you know, it's really, you cut that in half, because if you know the bones on one side, you just know the bones on the other side. I mean, there's no differences other than their rights and lefts. And once again, you don't need to know the specific, absolute, like, oh gosh, how many are there here? You know, you'll see how it goes as we go along, the carpals and the metacarpals and all that sort of stuff. So that's the general breakdown. The first one up here is going to be the pectoral girdle. We're going to be talking about the scapula, the humerus, the radius, the ulna, the bones of your wrist, the carpal bones, the metacarpals, and also your fingers, which are your phalanges. You probably did that, though. And, oh, you came back good here. You need these minutes. All right, Sean, let's see if we can. All right, well, the first one is your collarbone, your clavicle. Obviously, you know, you can see that one, no problems with that. And the clavicle really, as far as we're concerned, has 3 sort of features you need to know. Now, this is a pretty small clavicle. You can see that it's a rather small bone. We've got 3 clavicles that are out back there. One which is really a big, beefy clavicle, and the other 2 which are certainly much smaller, perhaps from a female. But as far as the features on the clavicle, there are just 3 features which we'd like you to be able to recognize. There's this end, and now since we've got the axial skeleton here, the sternal end, which of course is the end of the clavicle that articulates with the sternum, more specifically with the manubrium of the sternum. Then there's just sort of the body of the bone. And then this is the acromial end, which articulates at a feature on the scapula called the acromion process. And then in between, there's just a little tubercle here called the conoid tubercle. It's just a little bump on the clavicle where several muscles, the sternocleidomastoid being one, attaches. So when you look at it, it's pretty simple. You've got this sort of kind of flat, almost shovel-shaped end here, and that's the acromial end. And then this more rounded end here, which is the sternal end. You can try them on, see how they fit, right? And then this one, the tubercle is really small, and this one is just this kind of little bump right there. It's really tiny on this tiny little clavicle. As I mentioned, this is a bone which is relatively, it's very exposed, obviously, relatively fragile in most people, and a bone which is a relatively common fracture on certain athletic endeavors. One that I'm specifically, kind of more aware of, although I never broke my clavicle, is cycling, not motorcycling, but bicycling, bike racing. And, it's a fact of life in bike races, there's wrecks. And people's wheels overlap and they go down. And your initial, what you want to do to protect yourself is put your arm out. And when, to cushion the blow. When you do that, very often the force is transmitted up the arm and into the clavicle and snap. Not only is there pain involved, but you're going to be holding your arm like this, because suddenly now the arm just kind of wants to drop like that, because this bone is kind of holding this whole structure together. Fortunately for people who fracture their clavicles, it's a relatively easy repair. Typically, usually, some little screws get put in there, and it's a bone that heals quite quickly. Within just a few weeks, you're usually back to not too much pain,
that sort of stuff. Oftentimes when a fracture heals, it leaves like a little bump or something. Sometimes you can feel, and